Welcome in, y'all. Week 14 NFL picks straight up and against the spread. Been doing amazing against the spread this year in the 99.8th percentile, as you can see there. We're 13 weeks in. I've only had 3 losing weeks against the spread, so doing pretty good. And a little fun fact here about Thursday nights. I've been great on Thursday night, 11-4 on against spread picks this year and 9-1 in the last 10 Thursday games. On the flip side, though, just a little heads up, Mondays I have actually kind of struggled with, but we'll get to that at the end of the video. Kicking this one off, Cowboys, Lions. This one's going to be a fun one. This is just a great game. You get a nice dome game with two teams with really good offenses. That's always a lot of fun. A short week. Well, not really a short week for these teams. They both played a week ago on Thanksgiving. Cowboys coming off that huge win against the Chiefs, back-to-back wins against the Eagles and Chiefs. They are flying high right now. The Lions, they're struggling right now. After a good start to the year, they've really taken a few steps back. Sit at 7-5. They're riddled with injuries. This Lions team on the offensive line, Laporta's out. Sounds like Amon-Ra might be out. The secondary's dinged up. So a lot of injuries there. But this is still a very, very good football team. And historically, with Dan Campbell, they have done phenomenal when coming off of losses. So that's definitely something to keep in mind here. When making this pick, I went back and forth. This is, I think, the one I spent the most time deciding on this week, and which tells you I'm not incredibly confident in it, because I kept going back and forth. But I like the Lions to win and cover in this one. I have it 38-33, a really high-scoring game. Looking at that, I would definitely have it a tick lower on the scoring. That's a pretty crazy game there, but you never know with these two. But I'm going Lions for a couple reasons. First things first, you try to block out the recency bias. It's very difficult. Cowboys coming off 2 huge wins, but you got to look at the grand scheme of things. Cowboys are 2-4 on the road. They haven't played amazing on the road. Now, they've played really good overall since their bye week. They seem to have regrouped. I know the trade deadline helped, so they're definitely a different team. But they've struggled on the road a little bit this year. And the Lions, despite the injuries, a lot of injuries, they're still a really good team. They're still a team. If they can get healthy, they can contend and all that. And the next part of it is everyone, and I mean everyone that I'm noticing. I looked at like 9 different places. Everyone's picking not just the Cowboys to cover, but the Cowboys to win. And that just doesn't sit right with me, right? When every single person's picking an underdog, it doesn't sit right with me. So I like the Lions in this one, but I don't feel amazingly confident in it. With the offensive line dinged up, missing Amon-Ra probably and Laporta, the Lions really got to get the ground game going. Can they establish things on the ground to open up the pass for Goff off of play action and stuff? If they can do that, I think they can absolutely win this game. If they struggle to get going on the ground, and they just got to sling it, the whole time. The offensive line hasn't held up well. They could be in trouble. Cowboys could run away with it. But we'll see. My pick is the Lions. Then we'll jump on over to Sunday. We have Dolphins visiting the Jets. And, the Jets, they've won 3 of their last 5 now, because they started this season 0-7. So good on them there. But this still just is not that great of a team. I think we know that. The Dolphins are 5-7. They've been playing some good football recently. And however unlikely it is, if they were to win out, they would still probably find their way into the playoffs. Maybe it'd be kind of a tiebreaker scenario, but they're definitely playing for something here. And they're only favored by 2.5 on the road. They almost coughed one up to the Saints last week after kind of having that game in control the entire time. But really, I like the Dolphins in this one. Not going to overthink it. The weather could be a factor. Just you got a team coming from Florida. I think it's supposed to be 34 degrees with chances of rain. So that's not awesome for the Dolphins. But I think they find a way in a close, relatively low-scoring game. I think the Dolphins will sneak one out there. Then moving on to Pittsburgh at Baltimore. The winner goes into first place of the AFC North. Both teams at 6-6. Losing team will be sitting with a losing record. So this is a big deal here. I think it's a bigger deal for Baltimore, right? Because they play each other again the last week of the season. That one's at Pittsburgh. So Baltimore really doesn't want to be dropping this one at home. They are favored by a full 6, which that's a lot of points. And, I said it before I made my pick last week. It's the reason I picked the Bengals and as one of my locks to cover against the Ravens, is Ravens getting a bit too much credit for this winning streak. They're not beating that good of teams. They've shown some holes. Pittsburgh hasn't looked amazing either, but I think this game is closer than 6 points. I think Baltimore is going to get a win at the end here. I have this one 20-17. I think Pittsburgh keeps it close. I think they hang around. I think this is actually a really good, a really fun game. I'm looking forward to it, and the winner is going to come out ahead in the AFC North. But I will take Pittsburgh to cover. Baltimore sneaks out a win at home. But I really do think Pittsburgh has the ability to go in there and get that one, though. So we will see. New Orleans at Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay favored by 8.5 points in this one. The Bucs are just, they're surviving right now. It feels like they've had a lot of injuries. They hadn't been playing very well. They dropped, I think, 3 straight games against very good opponents, but 3 straight games. Then they came back, got what ended up being a close win against the Cardinals last week. Bucs have already played the Saints this year. They went into New Orleans and kind of just steadily dominated that one. And I kind of think they do a similar thing here. I don't think it's a walk-away blowout by any stretch, but I think the Bucs can win this one, and I think they can cover that 8.5. I have them 24-10 in this one. The Bucs, all of a sudden, they have to fend off the Panthers for first place in that NFC South division. So we'll see. They're going to need to not trip up along the way. They do still play the Panthers twice, so those will be some interesting games. Moving on now, though, we have another game that is for the division lead. It is Indianapolis visiting Jacksonville, 2 8-4 teams tied for the division lead. I think Jacksonville holds the tiebreaker at the moment. But it really doesn't matter considering these two teams haven't played yet. And this is a huge one. The winner, has eyes on locking up the division, and they'd only be a couple games back of that first round bye. However unlikely it would be to catch the Patriots. But, it becomes a conversation. But the loser of this game is just worried about making the playoffs. The Colts, what a fall it would be to lose this one, and then all of a sudden you're like only a game ahead on a playoff spot, and it's like, we got problems now. But in this one, I like the Colts to win. I like them to cover as well, only a 1.5 point line. I think the Colts are just a slightly better team right now. I haven't seen enough from Trevor Lawrence to have full faith in the Jaguars. That defense has been playing very, very well. And, maybe they can really just, suffocate this Colts offense, as it's happened to them a couple weeks now. But I think this one is a close game down at the end, and I think the Colts find a way. I think I trust them a bit more here. But this is going to be a really close game. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And like I said, winner goes to 9-4, leads the division, and is in the driver's seat to host a first-round playoff game. So that'd be a lot of fun. We'll move on to a relatively uninteresting game. You have Tennessee visiting Cleveland. Two bad teams here. There's a little chance of weather, not super high. I think like 20-30% chance of snow, low 30s. But really in this one, it's who's worse. And I think the Titans are just worse. They seem incapable on offense right now. The defense has been so. But it's just not good enough. This Browns defense is so good. I think they're just going to shut them down. The Browns offense will do enough to win, and I think they'll do enough to cover. I have a ridiculously low scoring prediction, 16-9. I'm sure these teams will find a way to score more than that, but I don't know that the Titans can score more than that on this Browns defense. And I don't know if the Browns offense is really good enough to put up a ton of points. So 16-9, Browns win is my prediction in this one. Then our next one is Washington at Minnesota. Two teams that are essentially eliminated here. Maybe not mathematically for at least the Vikings. The Commanders might not be mathematically out yet. I'm not sure. But either way, two teams that won't be seeing the postseason this year. McCarthy sounds like he'll be back for the Vikings. As rough as he's been, it couldn't have been worse than last week when they went to play Seattle. So they'll probably be happy to have him back. And Washington, may or may not have Jaden Daniels back, and that's actually part of this here. This pick is kind of like I have two scores for Washington. One is with and one is without Jaden Daniels. So I think without Jaden Daniels, I think the Vikings win this game. With Jaden Daniels, though, I think the Commanders win this game. So here I'll show my scores. So you can see the little slash there that is without and with Jaden Daniels for the Commanders. And the Vikings score, I think I'll just keep it where it is. But yeah, like I said, not that interesting of a game. A game of very little importance. Unfortunate at this point in the year getting games like that, but it is what it is. And, I think it depends on who's starting, but it should be a close game either way. But let's move on to Seattle at Atlanta. Atlanta coming off a loss to the Jets, which I did pick the Jets last week, but it's just so disappointing for Atlanta. I mean, one step forward, two steps back kind of thing for the Falcons. This team should be better than it is. They have a pretty good amount of talent there in Atlanta, and they're just not taking advantage of it. It's really unfortunate for them. This Seattle team is very, very good. That is going into Atlanta this week. This is a very, very elite Seattle defense and an offense that, limits mistakes, knows how to move the ball, and knows how to, play complementary football with that defense. And I think this is one that it's not necessarily like a blowout from the get-go or anything like that, because I think Atlanta is good enough to hang around, but Kirk Cousins, at quarterback for the Falcons, relatively immobile. Seattle, I think, could get to him. The secondary is going to cause nightmares for the Falcons. I think Seattle does win this one. I think they cover, but it's one of those that there's a weird feeling about it. I have a weird hunch that it's like somehow Atlanta is going to hang around late in this game. Again, I'm not picking it because my mind, I disagree. I don't think that's going to happen, but there's just this weird gut feeling that Atlanta is going to find a way to stick around. I don't know, but I'm not trusting it. Give me Seattle to cover and win in Atlanta. Then we'll move on to what was the 4:25 Eastern game. It was moved to 1 o'clock Eastern. It's the Bengals visiting the Bills, and with Burrow back and with Bengals going into Baltimore and getting a win last week, all of a sudden this game looks pretty fun. There's a chance of snow, a really low chance, but it is supposed to be cold in Buffalo. But Bills favored by 5.5, 6 points, going back and forth in this one here. And, when they've been playing with these two quarterbacks, the Bengals have kind of had the Bills' number. There's that playoff matchup, several regular season matchups. And heck, even in the one regular season matchup that didn't get finished, the Damar Hamlin unfortunate incident, the Bengals were looking great at the start of that thing. So I think 6 points is too much in this one. I know the Bengals have struggled not just on offense this year, but heavily on defense. So Burrow's return can't necessarily fix that. But I think not only do they hang around, not only do they cover the 6 points, give me a motivated Bengals team to go on the road into Buffalo and get a win against the Bills. A big upset pick here. I just think this is one that it absolutely could happen, so I'm going out on a limb and saying it will. I think the Bengals are good enough with Burrow. I think they know that if they win out, they will probably win the division. And this is probably their hardest game left. They get Baltimore again, but that's in Cincinnati. This is the big one. This is the hurdle you got to get over. You're on the road against a very good Buffalo team. I think they know if they can find a way to get this one, that the playoffs are absolutely within reach. So I will take the Bengals to win it. Buffalo, they're kind of in no man's land right now. They're almost certainly going to make the playoffs, right? They'd have to lose several to drop out of the wild card spot. But they're probably not going to catch the Patriots, because even if they go and beat the Patriots next week, and on top of that, if the Patriots lose against Baltimore the next week after that, the Patriots would still hold the tiebreaker and still be in first place of the division. Patriots would just have to take care of business, against the Dolphins, against the Jets, and I think the Patriots have that division locked up. So Bills kind of in a weird spot. Give me the Bengals, upset pick on the road. Then we move on to the first of the late games. We have Denver visiting Vegas, 10-2 versus 2-10. Broncos are favored by 7.5. These two teams played on Thursday Night Football a few weeks ago. That one was a low-scoring affair. It was 10-7 Broncos in that one. Defense played good as usual for the Broncos. The offense, like most of this season, just couldn't get going. Broncos survived a scare against the Commanders on Sunday Night Football this past week. The Commanders went for 2 in overtime, and really he was open. The pass gets batted down, and Broncos escape with a win, but that was a dangerous one. They got to stay focused here against some of these weaker teams because the Broncos still have tough matchups coming. They got to play the Packers still. They got to play the Chiefs still. They got to play the Chargers. I mean, their schedule is tough. The Chargers could catch them for the division, but I think the priority for the Broncos is you have your eyes set on that 1 seed because it's a big deal to get that 1 seed because especially this year in the AFC with teams like the Chiefs and Bills falling to the wild card in round 1, do you really want to, even though you get to host the playoff game, sure, but do you really want to be hosting against those teams? I think the bye is a pretty big deal this year. So, they got their eyes set on that. For this game, I think they're going to find a way to win like the Broncos have done all year, but I think it stays within 7.5. I have the Raiders covering this one here. They played them close earlier this season. The Broncos offense is just one I can't trust right now. The defense is elite, right? It's out of this world. I don't want to hype it up too much, but it's a darn good defense. I'm going to take the Raiders to cover in this one because the Broncos are not a team that's been blowing teams out this year, and they're not covering many big spreads. So I'm going to roll with the Raiders until the Broncos prove they can do that kind of thing. Then our next late game, the Rams visiting the Cardinals. Rams 8.5 point favorites on the road here. The Cardinals, I believe, are actually 3-9, not 2-10. But regardless, this is a bad spot for the Cardinals. You got a Rams team who, is blowing teams out of the water each and every week. They go on the road to Carolina. You get 3 turnovers in the pouring rain. They end up losing late, and this is a motivated team coming back. They were talking about they needed that loss. And I think they're going to be very focused in this one. It's going to be a bounce back week, and the Cardinals they've kept a lot of good games close against good teams this year, but they've also been blown out a few times. And I think this is one of those blowout spots. I think the Rams go in there. I think they've done it a lot actually to a lot of teams this season. I think the Rams kind of roll early. Like they get a couple touchdowns in the first quarter. And then they just kind of cruise the rest of the game. So I have this one 34-13. I have the Rams covering that 8.5 and a bounce back spot on the road there in Arizona. Then the main late afternoon game. This game got moved from 1 o'clock Eastern to 4:25 Eastern on Fox. So kind of in the prime slot there. You have the 9-3 division leading Chicago Bears, NFC leading Chicago Bears, on the road against 8-3-1 Packers, and the Packers are favored by 6.5. I saw something that was interesting today. Someone was saying how, the Bears have 9 wins as the 1 seed. The 49ers at the 7 seed also have 9 wins. And believe it or not, the 1-seeded Bears of the 7 teams currently in a playoff spot are, according to the odds makers, the most likely of the 7 to miss the playoffs. So some interesting stuff going on with all that, but this is a huge game. This is a huge game for both teams. The weather is going to be about 15 degrees, I believe, last I checked, in Green Bay. That's kind of a big deal. I think it suits this Packers team a bit more, their play style. But I think both teams are equipped for it. I'm not super worried. But it's going to be a fun one. I think 6.5 is a big number, but it also scares me because, analytically, listening, you look at the odds makers, all that, it really sounds like they think Green Bay could roll here. But Green Bay hasn't been a team you can trust like that this year, and the Bears kind of keep, overcoming these low expectations and the doubters. So I think they're going to be able to keep this one close. I think it's a close game, But I absolutely do like the Packers to win. I think they find a way in the end. I think they do win this one. The Bears absolutely could go in there and get it done, though. I mean, they just went into Philadelphia and got a win. This is a team that's very capable, as they've been proving these last few weeks. I just trust the Packers more in this spot. So Green Bay to win, Chicago to cover, but that should be a fun one there. Then we'll move on to Sunday Night Football. In what could be coined an elimination game. Not officially for either team, but the loser of this game very well will probably miss the playoffs. The winner isn't necessarily making it either. They still have some work to do, but the loser is in trouble. And who would have thought the Chiefs would be sitting here at this spot this year, 6-6, with 1 to 2 losses away from missing the postseason entirely. They're at home in this one, 3.5-point favorites, and it seems like one of those spots where it's like, yeah, the Chiefs, they come home, they find a way, they maybe they even win big, right? That's what the Chiefs team we've known for. They bounce back, they do it when when their back's up against the wall. But they've had several times this year where they had a big spot, they needed a win, and they're just not getting it. They went into Denver. The Chiefs needed that win. They don't get it. They went into Dallas. They needed that win. They don't get it. Mind you, those were on the road, but still, here they're home. They do need a win. The Texans also need one. This is a playoff rematch from last year. I am going to go with the Chiefs to get this one, though, this time. I think they find a way late, but man, do I not trust them. I do not trust the Chiefs, which is not something I think I'd find myself saying. But yeah, they keep finding ways to lose close games this year. The Texans are a good team, though, especially defensively. I think that defense is going to give Mahomes and the Chiefs a lot of issues. But I have this one in a very tight game. I think maybe a walk-off field goal wins it. I have it 24-23 in what I think will be a really fun Sunday Night Football game. Kind of an elimination game, kind of a playoff game for both teams. So that should be a good one there. Went back and forth on it, but ultimately settled with the Chiefs to win, Texans to cover. Then we move on to Monday night. As I said earlier in the video, as amazing as I have been doing on Thursday nights, or Thursdays in general, Mondays have definitely been one of my biggest weak spots. I've definitely struggled against the spread on Monday nights, but we're going to try to get one this week, of course. So Eagles visit the Chargers. This one, there's a lot up in the air, and it might be one of those games I make an update to my pick on the community channel if there's some big news, because currently Herbert is slated to play. He had surgery, I believe, on his non-throwing hand, but obviously if he misses the game, that's a huge deal. This line would swing, and it'd probably be Eagles by a good amount. But I'm assuming Herbert is playing when I'm making this pick. And really going through it, the Eagles are a team we've seen in the past. When things are good, things are good. The team's meshing, they're playing well, but when things go bad, this locker room is very unstable, and it snowballs week after week after week, and stuff just seems to somehow get worse in there. And if Herbert is playing, I'm going to go with the Chargers to win in this one. An upset win at home. I have it 20-16 Chargers. On paper and given some of the injuries, I think the Eagles definitely have an edge. I just can't trust them the way they're playing right now. So I'm going to take the Chargers at home to get a huge win. Chargers a win here. They keep pace with the Broncos, maybe giving them a chance in that last game of the season to take the division. The Eagles, a loss here. It depends on what the Cowboys do on Thursday night, but if the Cowboys were to sneak out a win in Detroit and the Eagles were to drop this one, Cowboys would only be a half game back. That'd be crazy. But this should be a fun week of football. And I already made a video on it a few weeks ago, but next week, week 15, just saying, I know we're looking ahead. Get ready for that one. That's going to be an amazing week. You have powerhouses going at it. You have Patriots versus Bills. You have Chiefs versus Chargers. You have Ravens versus Bengals. You have Rams versus Lions. You have Broncos versus Packers. You have Colts versus Seahawks. Those are 6 games that are just amazing games next week. So I'm looking forward to that as well. But as always, looking forward to a great week of football this week. Let me know where you disagree on the picks and what you think, and hope it's a great week.